3 o'clock this hour of the Sports Bash, 97.3 ESPN. We got a whole bunch going on, including our final Phillies mailbag of the season. This will recap all of the 2025 season, and, of course, the offseason ahead. Frank Klose covers the Phillies for 97.3 ESPN.com. And, of course, he joins us with the final mailbag of the season here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN. And the Phillies, watching that game last night was kind of rough, man, at times. And then you saw the Dodgers win 2-1, same situation. You have the Ohtani intentional walk, and then a bases-loaded walk, which made it 2-0 Dodgers. They get to Sasaki. They got to bring Trinan in the game, and you're having all these flashbacks of the decisions in the Phillies series. But Dodgers end up winning last night. But let's start with the decision to bring back Rob Thomson. That was named yesterday, that he will be back. Were you surprised? Let's start there. Were you surprised it's been right out there reported that he will be back?
No. I really did believe that Rob Thomson would be back. I have a really hard time thinking that it was he who is somehow responsible for the end fate of the Philadelphia Phillies. Did he make a couple of mistakes throughout the playoffs? A couple things we can point to and say, well, maybe he shouldn't have done this or that. We spent time talking about the bunt, for example. But we could talk about bullpen management a little bit. But I don't think that he was the cause of the Phillies being eliminated that quickly. I feel like if you look at the offense, now that the dust has settled, Ryan Kerkering, that in the immediate aftermath, people were really worried about that. But as time goes on and the dust settles, you really realize just how little the Phillies offense contributed, especially those top three at the beginning of the lineup. And he can't make them swing the bats, right? He can put them in the best situation to try to score some runs, and I think he did with them up at the top of the lineup, but they just simply didn't get it done.
They didn't get it done, and Rob Thompson's back, and so it sounds like you didn't think there was any chance, or like you're saying that you didn't think he deserved to be, but did you think that they would actually think about it just to kind of change something? Because, Frank, I know we're going to talk a lot about the offseason changing this team up. It's going to be tough for them to really change a lot here unless they're able to make some trades, unless they're able to kind of make some moves that you can't guarantee you're going to be able to make trades or make moves to improve your team. So one thing you can guarantee is, hey, let's get a different voice in here. So did you think that was a possibility?
I don't think that would contribute positively. So, no, I didn't think that was a possibility. I feel like Rob Thomson has the respect of everybody in the locker room except maybe Nick Castellanos. But more on that later, I'm sure. But I really do think that they trust him. They believe in him. I think it would be, as often is the case, you want to sort of jolt the players when you make a firing like that. I think who was it? Ned Yost got fired down the stretch with the Milwaukee Brewers, even as they were headed to the playoffs. They were trying to wake up the players in the roster, but going into an all season, I just don't see how that would have the desired effect. I think it would rattle them too much. I just couldn't see anything good coming out of that. So I don't think they ever really considered such a thing.
So T's first question in the mailbag is, what are your thoughts on the news coming about Rob Thomson coming back in 2026? If Thompson's here, I guess what are some of the things that Thomson might have at his disposal that could be different?
Well, I'll tell you this, though. One thing will be different. Coming into 2025, the Phillies extended his contract a year so that he would not be a quote-unquote lame duck manager, as they often call it, right? He's got no guarantees beyond this year. So in some respects, that is the change, that there might be a more motivation to make things happen. But as level-headed a guy as he is, I don't think that would change him too much. But it does sort of make a statement to Rob Thomson, like, yeah, we're bringing you back, but if we're not extending you, that's a clear sign that we want to see how this goes. So that could be a technique that works out for them by not giving him that other year. But honestly, I think he is the type that's very, very level-headed, and I think what he needs more than anything else is just to shake up this roster some. Now, I know you said that just a moment ago that there's really no guarantee, but I think the player mix remains a problem. And for him to be in the position to succeed, you need to. And by the way, Mike, I know you've said it a million times, and we've talked about it a million times. If Alec Bowman's your cleanup hitter, you probably have a problem because that's not the type of hitter he is, right? I think Alec Bohm did a fine job this past season. I don't think that if I'm looking at his performance, I would have anything to complain about. But that doesn't mean that he should have been the number 4 hitter in this lineup. It's just kind of what he had to work with, right? The Phillies just did not ever have that reliable right-handed bat in the middle of that lineup. And, they had a spot in the outfield. They signed Max Kepler. I thought it was going to be a right-handed bat that they were going to add. They went to the left side and said, oh, well, he can play every day and he can hit lefties, but they never really let him. So I think that last offseason, there kind of at least was a willingness to try to make some of those moves, but at the same time that they were really worried about, not worried, maybe that's not the right word. They weren't going to just give up on Alec Bohm because they need a right-handed bat in the middle of the lineup. They really wanted to make sure that something made sense. And what ended up happening was having all these people coming back, though, they still found themselves without that bat. So I think some of those things are outside of Rob Thomson's control. And I think that he just had to do what he had to do, given with what he had. So I think the statement of, hey, this is your lame duck year, that's being made. But at the same time, a lot's on Dave Dombrowski to really shake this lineup up and make it function a little bit better, or the overall roster function a little better. Which what I said, you can't have 3 platoons like we saw really affected them in the postseason.
Well, with that, another question would be then, Frank, what would be your first priority this offseason?
I don't think there's a single priority. There's not this one need that I think, okay, well, the Phillies have to do this and that solves their problems. I mean, I think it's a bigger picture kind of question. And I think the top priority should not be anything other than being open-minded about how they can improve the roster. Now, I've always thought, and I still lean this way, I still think that the Phillies could bring back Kyle Schwarber and JT Realmuto, both of whom are free agents this offseason. But I think that they should still be open to the possibility of doing something else if that means that they can get better. Now, let's start first with JT Realmuto. The Phillies need a catcher. We know there's not that many options out there. But if there is, I would at least expect them to explore that possibility, even if on the surface it's a little bit uncomfortable. Now, the one option then that probably will be available this offseason, I say probably because they've sort of talked around it, but Adley Rutschman in Baltimore is under control for 2 more seasons. But their top prospect, Samuel Basallo, is a catcher as well. And now they've kind of said, well, maybe they could play some first base. But they just signed Basallo to an 8-year, $67 million contract. So it seems to say to the rest of the world that, oh, yeah, maybe Rutschman can be had. So I'm not saying give up on JT Realmuto. I'm saying make the phone call and see what might be possible, right? Because the Orioles are going to have other needs besides having 2 catchers and maybe one of them playing first base. So
it's funny. 2 years ago, if you talked to people in Baltimore, Rutschman was like the second coming. There was no way, and I've heard some of those rumbles as well, is that he did not have a great year this year. That Orioles team really struggled, and that Rutschman can now be somebody that could be had.
Yeah, no, it could be had. I don't know if he can or not, but I mean, I think this is the off season where you make the phone calls and check. And this is another tough one to say, or another uncomfortable one to say. But if you realize that Kyle Schwarber is going to command $30 million a year, do you also then see what happens around the free agency of Kyle Tucker? Kyle Tucker has been a consistent 4 or 5 WAR player for several years now, All-Star 4 years in a row. Wouldn't it be better maybe? Or could it be better? I'm asking the question. I'm not stating it, but would it be better to spend that $30 million on somebody like a Tucker who can play right field? He had a little bit of a down year last year defensively too, but he could play a position, right? Kyle Schwarber would be a DH and not much else, right? So, I think it's a foregone conclusion Nick Castellanos won't be back, but so I guess the question is, okay, if we're going to commit $30 million to somebody who is an impact to left-handed bat, does it have to be Kyle Schwarber. Now, I think it still probably will be him, but
Mm-hmm.
I think the priority should at least be, hey, what are the other possibilities, right? I mean, I think we even knew this growing up when we had baseball cards, right? So everybody values their own baseball cards too much. Well, sometimes the organizations value their own players too much. No, I think the priority should be an open mind and see where it takes you, because at the end of the day, it's their responsibility to win a World Series. It's not their responsibility to keep everybody's favorite players around. And they did make a tough choice. They let Rhys Hoskins go, and that was probably the right baseball move, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think at least keep an open mind. And again, I still think that those two will be back.
Let's real quick. You mentioned Castellanos, and most people think that he's going to be gone. What legitimately could they? I mean, they're not getting anything for him. They're just trying to dump him somewhere. Is there a team or type of team that profiles of like they would be someone that would take a Castellanos? He's making $20 million. You're going to have to eat a lot of that money, and you're not getting something in return for him, right?
You're probably talking Castellanos and $14 million to the Cincinnati Reds for a maybe makes it, maybe doesn't prospect at Class A. I mean, it would be it would be trying to find him another home, and I think it probably one of the smaller market teams that would like to hope to tap into some of his power. Maybe one he had a past relationship with, like Cincinnati, where it went well. Maybe that's the type of place where he would fit. I mean, they're going to lose Austin Hayes to free agency. Maybe they give a Castellanos a shot, but I do think that would be a good shakeup. I mean, his defense doesn't work anymore.
No, but I look at a team that's a bad team, like a Pittsburgh, Kansas City was reported in around the deadline. A team that doesn't have a lot of money to spend is hoping that they could trade him at the deadline if he has a good first half of the season. You generally will see, like, why the heck would the Pirates sign this veteran player? They're trying to get him so that they can trade him. And with 1 year left on the deal, if the Phillies are willing to pay the deal, they'll roll the dice in that they can trade him at the deadline. So I'm thinking like bad teams that are willing to take a crack that they could trade Castellanos at the deadline next year.
Yeah, there are always teams doing stuff like that. I'm even thinking back to yesteryear when the Pirates, you mentioned the Pirates, they would sign a Kenny Lofton, knowing full well he would not be there at the end of July, right? But there tends to be a number of veteran bats around that they could sign cheaply. That teams like that take a crack on. So I think, I think you're thinking the right way.
Same with Taijuan Walker.
Yeah, I would keep Walker around. I mean, I don't think in that role that he was in last year as the fifth starter, and I think you keep him around, and it's up to. I put it this way: I would go to spring training saying, "Hey, Taijuan Walker, you and Andrew Painter are going to battle this out for the spot in the rotation," and then probably Painter needs a little bit more time in the minor leagues, and he fills in for a while. That's kind of what I see Taijuan Walker doing next year.
Well, yeah, I mean, like he makes $18 million for one more year, but I would assume if you wanted to move on from him, you could call a Baltimore, a team that needs pitching but doesn't want to spend money on pitching. Like Baltimore to me is a candidate to go after Suarez because he won't make what like a number one ace will make, but Baltimore can pay him and make him their number one. And then if you say, hey, we'll take Taijuan Walker if you pay us to, that gives you two guys at the top of your rotation. Now, I know Taijuan Walker's not a top, but if he ends up pitching well for you and you could put him in the middle of your rotation, teams like that don't want to spend money but need help in the pitching department.
Yeah, I agree. But knowing what the Phillies just went through with Zach Wheeler, he's supposed to be back around the beginning of spring training. I actually think they should keep Taijuan Walker and just. Yeah. I feel like if they're going to have to pay him to play for somebody else, they might as well keep him themselves because you never have enough pitching, right? On paper, going into this year, he didn't seem to have a spot. He hung with them the whole way. I think that he's somebody that is kind of helpful to have around until you really sort out Andrew Painter and Zach Wheeler.
Pat wants to know the estimated payroll was about $290 million. Does that number go up, down, or do they have to start, or do you keep it somewhere near? Like, is this team going to keep spending more money?
Well, I think overall, I would say it's about the same. Now, what's that going to look like? I realize that yes, there are some key free agents for the Phillies this year, but the Phillies still have a lot of money committed to a core, right? That includes Bryce Harper making $27.5 million, Trey Turner making $27.2, Zach Wheeler will make $42 million, Aaron Nola $24.5, and yeah, he's got Taiwan Walker's got $18 million due, right? But I feel like at least though with those Walker is not certainly one of those core players, but I think they've got Duran signed, right? So I feel like they need to maintain at least the level they're at to keep them competitive. I don't think they went that far to try to pinch much more, but I think you're going to see some salaries cleared. I wouldn't, Jose Alvarado, $9 million option. I could see him them moving on from him. Max Kepler probably moving on from him, especially with Justin Crawford knocking on the door. Alec Boehm could be someone that's traded because he might make over $10 million during the final year of his deal. So I feel like you're going to see some money freed up to take care of the Schwarber position, whether it's Schwarber himself or another big lefty bat.
Yeah, what about Pete Alonso? We got people texting in. Here's a text with. They didn't leave their name, but what about looking into Pete Alonso, basically swapping Alonso in and letting Schwarber walk?
I don't think that helps you. I feel like you can handle one bat like that at a time. Now, if you got Kyle Tucker to play right field and bat left-handed, then maybe you can afford to do something like that with Alonso first. But I just don't see. I don't see two DH types coming in there. Yeah, I think they need the righty bat, but I don't know. I don't necessarily like that fit. So Now granted, if they lose Schwarber and then they're left kind of at the end and they haven't really gotten anybody else, so then maybe I would get in on an Alonso. But I don't. I think if you're going to give big money to a DH type who can't play a position, keep Kyle Schwarber. If not, spend the money on people who can play positions that give you an overall production. I mean, the WAR number is not perfect, but it does give you an indication of their total value to the club. And so I think I would focus on somebody else who is a higher WAR player that can do a little bit more for you on the field.
What about Stott, Marsh, like that group of guys who are under contract? They have some arbitration years. Do you stick with them? Marsh, I mean, had a good second half, but he had a real tough playoff. Do you keep him as part of a outfield platoon, or do you try to use Stott and Marsh to improve the team?
I would trade Brandon Marsh. I feel like there will be a team out there that has the right-handed bat. They need that left-handed platoon. And Marsh is very, very good against right-handed pitching. And I think he gives you decent enough defense if he's playing a corner outfield position. But I really struggle to see this team succeeding with that many platoons. I think one is the magic number, and that might be at second base. Edmundo Sosa and Bryson Stott, I thought, gave them the most. But too many platoons just kills your bench. And so if I'm the Phillies, I would try to find an everyday outfielder that's by the way, this is assuming Harrison Bader comes back and assuming that they figure out a way to get Justin Crawford in there full time. They still need one more outfielder. I think it should be somebody who can play every day. And so the value that Marsh gives you in the platoon is high in the platoon, but they just simply can't do too many. So I could see a Brandon Marsh being a trade candidate.
Phil and Brigantine, what about Turner going to second, Miller short, and you move Stott, or he becomes the utility guy?
I don't think that's a trade for this offseason. I think Aiden Miller...
Do you think Aiden Miller will be ready in 2026 at all?
I think you will see him in 2026, but I don't think you'll see him at the start of the season. So I don't think the Phillies can confidently go into spring training having a position for him. Now,
do you think he is a shortstop?
I tend to agree. I tend to think yes, but I'm not sold. He put it this way: they drafted him as a third baseman. They told him he would play third base. Then he said, "Well, can I please play some shortstop too?" They said, "Okay, we'll split it." And then they really liked what he did at shortstop, and they've kind of rolled with it. So I think he does have a chance to stick at the position. But I think that it's going to be it's not so cut and dry. We'll just move Turner. I think it would have to be under a lot of discernment before that happens, and I don't think it's going to happen this offseason. So I feel like Miller's going to fight his way into the roster probably around June after he's shown that he can. He's only played 8 games at AAA. I feel like he needs to get some more exposure down there, face some of those former major league pitchers that have more experience, and then he can fight his way onto the roster. And then I think next offseason is the one where you really look at the bigger picture and say, okay, who's going to play where?
So then Trey Turner's your starting shortstop on opening day.
I believe so.
Justin Crawford,
starting left fielder, in my opinion.
All right, and Bader would be a guy you're probably going to have to sign for multiple years. Do you have any concern? I said, this is his 6th team he's been on. I know he did good here in a month, but he has generally not been the player that we saw here.
Yeah, I openly have tweeted a couple times, like, I can't believe he's been on this many teams. I think the Phillies will first say, hey, you want to exercise the mutual option they have for $10 million, and if he says he's not going to take his, probably like a 3-year deal, $39 million or so, something like that, might get that done. I feel like they could. I feel like he's somebody that they could bring back, no problem.
All right, there are just some of the questions this Phillies team has this offseason. There are plenty more. What's going to happen with Zach Wheeler? Did we see Aaron Nola back as a key figure in this rotation? What happens with Rangers Suarez? We'll have plenty more on that this offseason. Frank Klose, at Frank Klose, the Phillies mailbag, the final version of the 2025 season, recapping everything that happened as the Phillies, of course, go out in 4 games against the Dodgers. And, of course, we'll have everything starting Thursday when Dombrowski and Turner speak. Can we see new hitting coach, pitching coach, coaches? I think the pitching coach is probably safe. I would imagine Kevin Long might be in limbo. We shall see. But it should be an interesting day on Thursday.
Sure will. I'm kind of skeptical that any of them would necessarily go to, but we'll see.
All right, Frank. Appreciate it as always, man.
Thank you, Mike.
All right, Frank Klose, 97.3 ESPN.com.